Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low Magazine yet? 4Low Magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. Today's guest on Conversations with Big Rich has always wanted to go fast, which led him to many opportunities to race, from motocross to the Rolex Series 24 Hours at Daytona, to X Games, to Baja 1000, and to KOH. My guest is Chris Ridgway. Hello, Chris Ridgway. How are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
Doing excellent. It's so good to have you on the podcast. Really looking forward to finding out more about you. We've known each other for a lot of years, but I can't say that we ever really had a chance to sit down and talk. So this will be good.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time today as you travel delivering cars and heading home now. And you've been on the road for quite a while, and you pulling over and taking the time for this interview is awesome. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's go to the first question. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Van Nuys. Well, I was born in Van Nuys, California, and then raised in the East, on the East Coast, like Virginia, and then back to California again by the time I was, I think, like 12 or 13.
And born on the West Coast, raised kind of on the East Coast. Was that parents working or something?
That was, yeah. I mean, that was my dad raising me.
Okay.
And he kind of took me from my mom, and we went as far away as possible.
Okay.
Because there were some things that went down, and it ended up being everything's good, but it was, I guess for a while I was too young to really know about it, but for a while, I guess we were on the lam.
Oh, okay. There's always interesting twists to everybody's story. So,
yeah.
Growing up like that, did you have a constant school, or were you constantly moving around, or?
No, this was back in the 70s.
Right.
And it wasn't it wasn't as easy to find somebody. So I was in school, and I talked to my mom all the time. I just wasn't allowed to tell her exactly where I was at and stuff like that. I mean, and my dad also made sure that no one ever, talked bad about my mom to me. My dad used to say that was up to me to decide when I was going to have another, a relationship with her. But so he wasn't demonizing her or anything. It was just that he thought that was the best for me. Okay. is to be brought up by him.
I can understand that, and kudos to him for, no matter how it worked out, for trying that, and also for not throwing your mom under the bus or demonizing her, as you said. I see that way too often, and
Right.
it's really it never works out well.
Right. And it wasn't even for that long. Um, I think it was maybe a year and a half at the most.
Okay.
I don't really know that. It's not something that my dad is super proud of. But I mean, my mom was back in my life by the time I was 4, and I would go visit her and stuff. And so it wasn't like it was that long,
Okay.
but it's just the way it was.
And so, what was school like for you?
I struggled. I, I'm sure there's all kinds of excuses now, like ADHD or whatever, but I just struggled at it. I couldn't, I just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't pay attention enough. I didn't comprehend what I was being taught very easily. I'm more about, actually doing something or seeing pictures or that kind of thing. And I think the only good year I ever had in school is when we moved back to California. The school system in Virginia was a lot farther ahead. And so when I got to California, it was like repeating a grade almost. So
Okay.
finally I was like caught up, you know what I mean?
Right.
It didn't last long.
How about socially? How did things go in school for you socially?
I don't know. I guess it was all right. I was I wasn't the most popular guy. I wasn't the least liked guy. I just was one of the guys, and I did my own thing. I did play sports and stuff, but after school, my interests were all about motorcycles, and so I went to North Hollywood High School for a while, and then we moved down to Orange County. But in North Hollywood, there was only one other guy that rode a motorcycle, a dirt bike, and that's all I thought about. Like I just couldn't think about anything else. I didn't want to go to parties. I didn't want to do anything but ride a motorcycle. So I wasn't super popular.
Right. So how did the motorcycle riding start? Was that was
My dad,
your dad?
my dad really liked to go riding, and in fact, he used to ride with Steve McQueen.
Oh wow.
Back in the day, and he just my dad was actually a baseball player, and he pretty much, if he didn't knock my mom up, then he would have probably gone on to the major leagues. He was heading that way, and a lot of people have told me that's where he was going. So it was a big commitment by my dad to give up his dream and make sure that he raised me properly.
Right.
And so I got raised by pretty much a professional athlete, and a guy that was, or he still is, mentally tough. And I learned a lot about mental games and a lot of stuff about, because my dad was a pitcher, and it's a very mental position. And he loved the motorcycles, and I got a taste of it when I was super young. I used to ride on the gas tank of his bike, and he would do some desert races. And we didn't have a little mini bike, so I would just, and I don't even know how old I was. I don't even know if I was old enough to even have a mini bike. But I rode on the gas tank a lot, and I loved it. That's all I thought about.
And did you, when you were growing up, did you work at all, or was it just school and riding?
It was just school and riding. I did have a couple of little jobs here and there, but they weren't nothing serious, and I would drop those things in a second if I needed to go to a race or something. But my dad supported me throughout, like, until I was a young adult. We didn't have, I wasn't driving like nice cars or anything. We had new bikes, and we had a place to live, and he supported me in my practicing, and it's very expensive, as you know. And so he gave everything he had, and it was enough that I didn't have to have a very serious job. And I mean, for a while, I kind of thought that racing was going to be my career. So it was kind of like an education for, the career I was going to have. And I took it pretty seriously. Looking back, I wish I would have taken it more seriously in some aspects, but I was pretty serious about it. Like I that's all, that's all I wanted to do.
And what aspects are those that you would have taken more serious?
I would have trained better and I would have eaten better.
Conditioning, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. And I think I would have taken a little bit more time. I always felt like I was behind the eight ball. Like, I was at 13 years old, I think, maybe even 14. I was still getting lapped in the ADCC beginner class. Like I wasn't good. I just wanted it. I wanted it more than a lot of people, and I took some really big chances. And when they pay off, you're rewarded, and when they don't pay off, you learn a lesson.
And when you say you took big chances, like in the race itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would see, I would just try to ride with whoever was going faster than me. And even if I didn't know how to do it, in my dumb brain, I would just say, I'll figure it out as it comes to me. And I would just twist the throttle more. And I had that mentality that if so-and-so can do something, there is no reason in the world why I can't do it on a motorcycle. The only thing I've ever been confident about is riding a motorcycle and maybe driving a vehicle.
That's
but nothing else really. I don't have comfort, like a confidence in much else.
Well, you're well spoken, so there's that. I mean, that's good.
Well, I have my dad to thank for that.
Okay.
Because I struggled so bad at school. He said, he said, well, at least focus on English and try to at least sound smart. And he's right. I mean, he said, he wasn't calling me dumb. He just said, you need to focus on English and be well spoken so that you can represent yourself better. And you're going to just sound, you're going to sound smart. And
right.
That's what I did. And it wasn't like I consciously worked harder at English. It's just for some reason it came easier to me than math. I suck at math, and I wish I didn't, because I love to fabricate, and I love to, my whole job about driving around the country is all about budgeting and trying to save money every mile, kind of thing. And so yeah, I wish I would have been better at math.
And so you did get through high school. Did you do any college?
I was taking tests on graduation day to get out of high school.
Okay.
Like I squeaked by, and I just struggled, and it didn't help that my mind was elsewhere all the time.
Right.
And I still struggle on stuff that I'm not interested in. I really struggle. And I can't fake it. It's just either I'm into it or I'm not. And I went, even like I missed all the parties and stuff. When I went to Orange County to go to school, I was a little bit more popular because there were more racers there. And I kind of instantly went to the top of the school for being a motorcycle racer, because they had a motorcycle racer there that was pretty good, and he was a class higher than me, but I was racing like the highest in, for the toughest organization kind of thing. And I was a junior and this guy was an intermediate, and everyone kept saying how fast he was, and I kept saying I don't think he can be that fast because I've never heard of him. So they kept saying, oh, we got to go out. And there was a lot of kids that were behind this guy. And they said, we got to go out to this place called Colton and go ride and see who's faster and this and that. And I was like, I've never heard of that place either. I'm getting a little nervous. And we end up going out there, and it's a place that I called Ritchie Canyon, but they called Colton. And I mean, I'm rolling up to the place, and I'm like, I knew I was in a good spot because I rode there a lot. And I was faster than him, and so and then at that time I was also in cycle news quite a bit. I moved up pretty quick. I went from getting lapped in the ADCC beginner class to being pro in probably like 5 or 6 years.
And what do you attribute that to? Was it just all of a sudden it clicked with you?
No, it never really seemed to just all of a sudden anything. It was just I'd practice my ass off, and I would take chances and figure stuff out, and then I just worked. I rode a lot. I didn't think I needed to train. I thought I needed to ride more than anybody, and so I just rode a lot. And on graduation, I didn't even go to I went to my graduation dance for just a little bit, and then I had the van and the bikes out in the parking lot, and I had to leave at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night and drive 300 miles up to Mammoth and race the next day. But that was me, and that was the last time I saw almost all those people. There's a few that stayed around in my life for a while, and until later on, when I had a little bit of success, I started getting phone calls from people I hadn't seen since high school. But yeah, I don't know, just like I said, I was all just about the racing, and I just worked really hard, and I rode as much as I could, raced as much as I could. I would race the 125, 250, and 500 cc classes every chance I got. And in motocross, we have 2 motos per race, per class.
Right.
So I would race Friday night at Ascot, Saturday, like up in Sacramento. So we'd get out of Ascot at like 10 o'clock at night. And we would, my friends or my dad, we would jump in a van, and someone would drive me all night long up to the next, that didn't sound good. Someone would drive all night long up to the next race in Sacramento, and we'd race there on Saturday, and then drive, all the way back down to Southern California and race on Sunday. So every weekend I was racing like 18 times a weekend.
Wow.
And that's no exaggeration. That's how many gate drops I got. So I had a lot of experience that I was gaining really quickly.
Right. And that's what got you to where you were at. You're just the constant riding, becoming one with it, basically.
And racing, not just riding, but
racing,
but gate drops and going into the first turn and having to basically get in front of everybody or get hurt, or you got to bulldog your way through people to get to the front.
Did you ever have any coaches? Did anybody ever step up and try to mentor you or anything?
I did. I did have a friend named Dan Berg, and he was like a really fast local pro, but we didn't work too much together. It wasn't like an organized thing. I would just try to ride with the guy as much as I could, and he would give me tips and stuff. And this is before I turned pro. And he would try to get me to calm down and be smoother, and I was all over the place, and I didn't have the greatest form. I just didn't care. I just wanted to go fast and win races, and winning to me was everything. It just, that's all that mattered to me.
Right. I can understand that. That's there's a certain, I don't know what you'd call it, I guess it's a satisfaction, but it's based on a chemical release almost, when you obtain those goals, and it becomes addictive. It really does.
Yeah, it was a way of me feeling important and feeling like people liked me, and it just, like you said, and the thing is, as you know about racing, it's that's all that matters to you. You're setting yourself up for a really hard life, because there's only one winner at each race, and there's always someone faster than you. You might have a run for a while, but it's not going to last that long. You're going to lose way more than you're going to win. So, that's it gets hard. I really enjoyed my amateur racing. I really enjoyed traveling around the country and being one of the fastest guys in the amateur class. I mean, I could go to Florida and win. I could go, all over the country and win. And then when I turned pro, I didn't stay around and race local, even though Southern California has a lot of fast guys. I went and raced the nationals against, Jeff Emig and McGrath and those guys. And I went from being one of the fastest guys in the amateur class to being a nobody in the pro class. And that was a tough pill to swallow, and it took a long time to, I also got hurt the first year on the circuit, and I blew my wrist up. Actually, I was with Dan Fresh.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan Fresh took me to he took me to like my first stadium race, and it had to be like 90, 91 or 92, and we went up to Seattle, and I was a spaz, I'm trying to win it first thing. But it was a Mickey Thompson race. It wasn't Supercross, and I had some speed, so I had a taste of that I could do it. That was my problem, is I had speed, and there were times when I could run with some really fast people for a little bit, and so that kind of kept me going. It was like the carrot, and so I went up to Seattle. I think I broke a small bone on my ankle and went to the hospital. And I don't remember. There's a reason why I don't remember all this very well. But I think I went to the hospital, and then Dan and someone else was driving me back down to Southern California. And we got into Central California, and there's this really cool riding area with all these jumps. So I think I cut my cast off and went riding. And apparently I was at least doing or trying to do this gigantic jump, because that was the kind of idiot I was. And I came up short, and I just knocked myself into next week and broke my wrist really bad. And I mean, the concussion, I don't remember really a whole lot of it. But we didn't go to the doctor. I got in the box van, and we went back home. And then I went to the hospital, and they had to operate and put some metal into my wrist, and it was my throttle hand. So it limited my throttle. And I didn't realize it at the time, but in a way it affected a lot of stuff for me, because I had to change my riding style, because I couldn't bend my wrist as good as it used to bend when it was stock. And so it was a sign that I, probably should have figured something else out, but I didn't.
So
I went back racing.
How did you and Dan Fresh become friends back then?
Dan used to race dirt bikes also.
Right.
And so we would see each other at the track. I was there when Dan broke his back really bad, and he had to get life flighted out. But we would just ride a lot together, and and then it's funny, because I actually didn't talk to him for a long time. When he broke his back, he was out of the sport.
Right.
And we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. And so you just lost touch, it's just the way it was. We weren't the best of friends. He we were very friendly at the track, and we went places together, but we weren't like constantly hanging out together and getting in trouble together and that kind of stuff. It was more just a motorcycle thing.
Okay.
And then when he was out of it, that was kind of the end of our relationship for a while.
So then you break your wrist. You're trying to recover from that. You kept riding though. How many years did you run pro?
I turned pro in 91, and I got hurt. The big injury came in 90, I think 95.
And you're talking your leg.
Yeah, both legs.
Both legs.
Yeah. So, but I didn't set the world on fire. I mean, I had some good races here and there, and mostly in Mickey Thompson stuff. I think I finished out the year in Mickey Thompson. I was in the top 10. I think I was number 8 or something like that. And it was good. It wasn't as competitive as Supercross, obviously, but it was like one notch down, and I could, it was my kind of racing. It was wide open. It wasn't as technical. It was like take big chances. And when we had to take big chances is where I usually did better. The guys that were super technical, they just didn't want to send it as far, maybe. But so the Mickey Thompson stuff was not as technical as Supercross, so it really helped me out. But yeah, I was racing. I mean, I was racing every time I could until I got hurt bad enough where I couldn't race anymore.
Right. And where were you at when the big wreck happened?
I was at Glen Helen.
That's a big track.
Oh, it was my favorite track. Glen Helen used to sponsor me. I used to be able to ride there during the week when nobody else was there. And I would just, my friend who his dad owned CMC Motorcycle Club. They like leased, I think they leased the track from Bud Feldman for a while, and they had a trailer there, and I would just stay in the trailer, and we would, he was a pro also, my friend, and we would ride, and we would, prep the track a little bit, water it, do that kind of thing. And I used to spend a lot of time at Glen Helen, like probably 3 or 4 days a week at Glen Helen. So I got hurt there a ton, but when you're riding that much at one place, you're always going to get hurt. I mean, you can't avoid it. So yeah, I know the place like the back of my hand, but I also went to the hospital out of that place many times. So
and what was the attraction of going back to the motorcycle after getting injured? And
I didn't have any other options.
Okay.
Like I thought that was my way to be somebody. I thought it was the only way that I could be somebody. We didn't have enough money for 4-wheel racing. By the time I was 15 or 16, I'd already blown out both my knees and had them reconstructed. So I couldn't run very good anymore. And I just wasn't skilled at much, The only reason I was good at driving is because of motorcycles. And I didn't realize that it would have that effect. As a motorcycle racer, you kind of think you're the baddest dude. I mean, because you're taking the biggest risks. You're jumping, you're railing the corners. You're going into the first turn with 40 other guys elbow to elbow at like 50 miles an hour. It's gnarly, and so you have to have this confidence, and it's such a hard line between being cocky and confident. Right. It's really difficult, and if you don't, and the thing is, if you don't have the confidence in motorcycle racing, you're going to get hurt. Like, you're not just going to lose, but you're just going to get hurt. And in car racing, it's just different. You just don't get hurt as much, and I think the only thing that really scared me in car racing was fire, but
Right. Fire is a motivator.
it is. It's a big motivator.
Yeah. So
But
how did you transition from motorcycles to
well,
cars? How'd that come about?
well, I so back to Glen Helen. My bike sucked a reed pedal, which is like a valve, off the face of a really big jump, and I rode Glen Helen so much that if there was a gate of 40 pros, maybe the top 6 would do this jump. It was that big, and it changed. Sometimes it wasn't as big, but on that day it was difficult, and my bike broke on the face, and I was going probably realistically probably 35 or 40 miles an hour, and I was probably 15 feet up in the air, which doesn't sound like a lot until you're 15 feet in the air and you look down
Right.
and you're thinking about jumping. And so the bike was going over the front. I was endoing, and I jumped through the handlebars to try to land on the downside of the second jump. And if I would have done that, I would have basically slid like a baseball player into base or something. But I landed on the upside of the second jump, right near the top, and I landed feet first, and both my legs just destroyed both my heels and my ankles, and then broke my legs too. And so I spent it was bad. It was really, really bad. And I spent like the next 3 years in and out of a wheelchair, getting surgeries, trying to get it fixed, and begging. At first, I would beg the doctor not to amputate my leg. And in hindsight, I wish that he would have given me like a year and then amputated it. But it's a problem I have with doctors now. But they were using me as like, let's see what we can do. How good are we? And the whole time I'm just getting my legs rebroken, and most of my left one, and just an extraordinary amount of pain, tons of operations, and just nothing but failure. And I wish that the reason I say I wish I would have had a year is because mentally I would have been over it. I would have been like, yeah, let's cut it off and let's move on. But so after 3 years in a wheelchair, one of the surgeries, both my ankles are fused up. Like the left one was fused right from the get-go with hardware. The right one has hardware. It still has hardware in it, and it's fused like the subtalar, so I can't roll my ankle anymore. It just goes slightly up and it goes down. And my left one was locked, like just like having a prosthetic ankle. It wasn't moving at all. And so they did this surgery, and I don't remember exactly how it went, but I was able to start riding again. I was still like on crutches most of the time. I couldn't walk across a parking lot. I'd have to use crutches, but I could stuff my foot into a boot, and I could ride a motorcycle. And because I was so good before, I could go to like these local races, and I could still win like the local pro class and stuff like that. And I wasn't racing against, super fast guys at that point, but I was still making some money. And I was also taking a shit ton of pain pills. I took 20 plus Norcos, which is Vicodin. I took 20 plus a day for years. I was on it all together for 9 years. And I was a wreck. I mean, mentally I was all screwed up, and physically I was all screwed up, and I was still racing though. And I think my dad supported me because I was still I was kind of like benefiting from all the work I'd done earlier. I was able to go to these races and I didn't have to train anymore. And I was, I was having success, and I was still one of the baddest dudes on the track wherever we went, as long as it wasn't a national. And, so it was enjoyable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that was like just the benefits of all the hard work kind of thing. And so my dad supported me, and I'd break my leg every once in a while. The doctors would break it, whenever they felt like it. And so fast forward to 1999, or actually 98, but they brought back the Mickey Thompson series. And so in 99, I made an effort to go out and do that. And that was nationwide. And I liked it because the races were short, so I didn't have to train. I was a great starter. So I'd always like qualify good, and I'd always be up at the front. And because of my two really fast friends, we were all on the same team. It was a White Brothers Yamaha team, and we were all racing the new Yamaha 4-stroke. I had good bikes, and I was able to run up front. So I had the championship points lead for like, I don't know, a long time, for most of the series, because my two buddies got hurt, and they came back and they were catching me, and I finished a ton of thirds, a lot of seconds, but I was always on the podium. And I mean, it didn't take long before we realized that there weren't guys that were faster than us. So our seriousness kind of dropped, and we were hanging out in bars all the time, and just it was honestly the best time that I ever had racing dirt bikes, because all the work was already done, and I was just relying on the speed that I had learned. And I was fast enough to be on the podium every week, and I was getting paid, and I was on ESPN all the time, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And I almost won that championship, but at the last round, I put my leg out and broke my leg and bent all the hardware in my leg, and so I didn't make any points, and I dropped from first to third in points. And then I thought for sure that I was going to get my leg amputated, just because it was a bad break. I went to the hospital, and the surgeon there was like, you need to go back to whoever started this mess, and you need to have that guy deal with his own problem, because my leg was hammered. It was disgusting to look at, all the scar tissue, and my heel wasn't lining up straight with my leg, and it looked like it was shattered, even though I was like racing. And so anyway, guy didn't amputate, and by now I wanted my leg amputated. So this is 99, and I wanted it gone, and he ended up fixing it again. So then back to this transition, back to the car thing, I went into racing Baja because I got a job as a tour guide in Baja, because that's how I made my money, was on a motorcycle. So I got a job back on my motorcycle making money as a tour guide. And then that guy that owned the company was like, man, you are really fast. Like, I think I need to get you on a team and race the Baja 1000. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. I'm a racer. And so the funny thing was, I had never raced a single off-road race in my life.
Everything was track.
Everything was track. And so my very first off-road race was the Baja 2000.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And we finished third in that. I had teammates, and a lot of guys crashed, and for once I was the only guy that didn't crash. But I kind of kept it together for us I was riding super fast, and I didn't crash, and so we got third. So now we're talking about 01, and now I'm having to figure out another way to make money, because I'm not making enough, and I'm still living with my dad, and which was fine. It's always been me and my dad. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? It was just, he was like my buddy.
Right.
And so I ended up getting a dually pickup truck and a big trailer. And this guy, Rod Emery, who has a Porsche restoration business, and he supported like vintage racing. He had a bunch of cars that he vintage raced. They bought a Porsche junkyard down in Southern California, but he lived up in Oregon. And I knew this guy from way back in the day from riding dirt bikes. And he's like, hey, I heard that you got a trailer. I got to move like 40 cars up to Oregon. And then I went and bought a trailer. That's what it was. I bought the trailer. I didn't even go home. I went straight to load up a load of cars and started making deliveries up to Oregon. And the first time he saw me, he hadn't seen me in a long time. My leg had been broken so many times that I had a 2x4 screwed to the bottom of my shoe. And he looked at me and he's like, what in the hell are you doing to yourself? And he saw, I never hid my pain pill, usage. I carried them around with me everywhere I went. It was like my security blanket. And so he knew I was taking a whole bunch of pain pills, and he said, someone needs to put you in a car. And I said, who's going to put me in a car? And he said, I will. He said, but you gotta get your leg removed and you got to get off the pain pills. And because I told him the only way I was ever getting off pain pills was if I got my leg removed. And so he said he would do it. So I went down and found a doctor to amputate my leg. And then
was that a hard thing to do, is find somebody that wanted to amputate it at that point?
Yeah. It was extremely hard. He was probably the 6th or 7th doctor I had seen.
Wow.
And I kind of a crazy story that it almost sounds unbelievable, but it's the God's honest truth. I told him I needed my leg amputated. I told him how I was getting all my Vicodin illegally. I told him everything. And I said, after this visit, if I wanted to, I could get Vicodin from you. I could call your head nurse and get Vicodin from her on the same day, and you guys don't talk to each other. So you have 3 or 4 doctors that you see. You can get a lot of pain pills, especially back then with the computers, the pharmacies weren't linking up. So I had one doctor and one pharmacy, and then another doctor and another pharmacy. And that's how I got on my pills. And I just paid cash for them. And I told him everything. And he was hemming and hawing. And I said, if you don't do this, you're the last guy I'm going to see, because I've seen a lot of guys and nobody wants to amputate because I have good blood flow. And basically the doctor's idea of success was if I could sit on the couch and not be in pain and watch football and get up and grab a beer, that's success to them. To a lot of doctors, that was success. And that wasn't successful to me. I had to be doing something, and I wasn't taking all the pain pills so I could sit on the couch. I took pain pills so I could, I restored a van. I worked on my bikes. I rode all the time. I was active, but I had to have pain pills to do it. And I said, you're the last guy I'm going to see. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I've come up with a plan to go to the hospital parking lot and in my van, and I'm going to blow my foot off with a shotgun in the parking lot. And then my friends are going to rush me into the hospital, and then it's going to be your problem. And I said, I am not a dramatic guy. I'm not trying to be a drama queen on this. What scares me is I don't see that being that bad of an option. I think I can handle that pain right now, no problem. And because I said other people get shot and they handle it, so there's no reason why I couldn't handle it. I just don't want to have to do that. That's crazy.
Right. Why take that dramatic of a step?
Yeah, and he just shook his head and he's like, wow. He's like, that's the craziest thing I've heard. And I said, it's just the truth, And he said, all right, I'll do it. And then I got some butterflies, to be honest with you. And then I said, well, there's a couple races coming up I want to do, because I walked into his office and I said, there's a couple races I want to do. So let me let's just wait till I break it again, because it's going to break. It breaks all the time, and we'll just cut it off, wherever it breaks. And by now my leg is breaking, because they've got so much metal in my ankle that's solid. So now it's just breaking like above the ankle and
the next weakest place, right?
Yeah. So, so I don't know, maybe a couple months went by, a few months, and I'm at Glen Helen again, and I kind of come to my senses, and my ankle is up by my ear, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I broke my femur. So, and then I realized I broke my femur on the wrong leg. So I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did this. And it didn't hurt that bad. It wasn't a bad break. Like, it didn't come through the skin or anything. And so I pushed it out of the way, and I was able to relieve the pain. And anyway, I went to the hospital, and they operated, put a rod in it. And it was, I think, not very long afterwards, I called the doctor, the guy that was going to amputate. And I said, hey, I just need to get this done. Let's set up an appointment to get this leg amputated. And he's like, all right, I'll let you know. And maybe a couple weeks went by, and he calls me up. And he goes, I got this thing on December 23rd. Someone canceled. I can get you in. It's like, perfect. Or no, it wasn't. I got out on the 23rd. It was like maybe the 21st or something. And so I pulled my own staples out of my femur, my leg, on the other leg. And I'd been to the hospital and had so many surgeries. Like, I knew how things work. So I went in on crutches and told, when you check in, I said, I'm here to get my leg removed. And they put me in a room and everything. And I'd already shaved my leg so that, because you don't want to have hair and stuff in your incision. And so I did all that, and I marked on my leg, this leg, blah, blah, blah. But I never told the doctor that I had just broken my femur.
On the other leg.
Because I knew that they were never even going to think of that, like they weren't going to ask if I had another broken leg. So I go in, they do the operation, and I come out, and the doctor's pissed at me. Why didn't you tell me you had a broken femur? I said, because I didn't think you would do it. And he's like, you're damn right I wouldn't have done it. And so I went from the hospital, I went home, and this is a true story. I went home, got my Carhartts, and immediately went out to Johnson Valley, because Randy had built me a buggy, like a samurai buggy. It was Randy's first buggy build, Randy Slauson.
Right.
And it was coming together right about the time I got my leg amputated.
And that was over New Year's.
Yeah.
That's when we met.
Oh, okay. And I had my leg all bandaged up, and I remember smacking it on the dash, and I cut it open, and someone's wife was a nurse, and we duct taped it back up. And
I thought you were the craziest son of a bitch I had ever met.
Well, you weren't the first one to think that.
I was with Bob Rogie. Okay.
Yeah. and Camo was there, and I don't remember which trip it was, because I drove with a crutch on the clutch for quite a bit. But I was doing backdoor with a crutch on the clutch in my buggy, and I ran over my crutch and bent it all up, and Camo like hose clamped a 9/16 wrench to my crutch to make it work. And I was a crazy dude, because I came from motorcycles, and all of a sudden I have a cage around me, and I'm like, I just can't get hurt. There is no way I can get hurt doing this. And I was aggressive anyway, so I would try new lines, and and it was, and so that was like just recreational wheeling, but I was good at it because I had a lot of experience off road, and it just kind of came to me naturally. And so then about a year and a half goes by, and now we're setting up to race this car that guy promised me. And it's not just any car. I mean, like, I had to go get my license and all that stuff, and this guy paid for all that stuff. And when I say it's not just any car, he bought a brand new Porsche GT3 Cup car like a full-blown factory race car.
Wow.
Comes from Porsche with the cage, everything. And I got my, and I'd never driven a car. Like I'd just driven vans and trucks and stuff. I'd never driven a race car. And I got my amateur license in a Nissan 200 SX or something. 2 weeks later, I'm at Daytona racing a Porsche and asking my crew chief if I can hold it wide open around the banking at 170 miles an hour, which I'd never gone that fast. But first lap, I'm just, because I wasn't scared, I was just like, hey, can I hold this thing wide open? And he just comes back, he's like, yes, Chris. Oh, cool. and so, so that was my transition into four wheels. And I was getting paid to race. And we were racing the Grand Am Rolex series. So it was pretty cool because I raced against some pretty heavy hitters, and I wasn't competitive. I think it was so expensive. It was unbelievably expensive. And so I never got to practice. They got me a go-kart, and I drove that thing. I just drove that thing into the ground. I would go out and run a tank of fuel out of it every day. And I had to move up to Oregon. Oh, so that I got rid of my rock buggies because I had to move up to Oregon and just get super serious about this car racing thing, which, I was proud to be serious about it.
Right.
And we had a go-kart track real close to us, and I just drove every day and just drove this go-kart, as much as it could take it. And then we had a Miata that I would race a couple times, and the Porsche was just a whole nother beast. I mean, going from a Miata to a GT3 Cup car, where you have to counter steer a little bit at 150 miles an hour when you shift to sixth, it's a different beast. And there were a couple times that I got scared in the car, like four-wheel drift at 160, 170 at Fontana. That scared me pretty good, and it happened every lap. But because I got away with it the first time, I knew I could do it again. So I just did it, And crazy thing was, I told my partner, Rod, who's a family man, he has 2 kids, a wife, he's got a successful business. And I'm like, Rod, this is going to be the scariest thing you've probably ever done, but hold it to the floor. And when you enter the banking, the car's going to go sideways on you, and then it's going to catch itself. You don't have to do anything. It's just going to catch itself, and it's going to be, you'll finish the banking on the rev limiter all the way around the bank. And so he did it. And I was like, man, I was so impressed. I'll never forget that. I was so impressed with that. He had so much more to lose. I felt like I didn't have much to lose. And so I would take chances like that. But for him to take that chance, because I know how scary it was. And my level of being afraid is on a little bit different level than a lot of people. And except if I'm not driving. If someone else is driving, I'm a pussy. But if I'm driving, I can, I never, ever, ever think I'm going to crash. I just, maybe that's why I was able to come back all the time. I never thought it would happen again. And even though I knew the chances were good, I was just like, well, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen. And then it would happen.
And how long were you able to race the Porsche?
We did it for a season, and then I was able to race for some other guys. It was so expensive. It was like, I think it was $170,000 per race.
Jeez.
In this car
for prep and all that. Yeah.
And we were going to the races in my pickup truck and trailer. Like we didn't have a semi. We were and this is the Rolex series. I mean, we raced against Dale Earnhardt. Like it was crazy. And we would get somewhere outside of, whatever track we were going to. And we would, I would unload the car out of my truck and trailer, and we put it into the semi truck for this team, BGB, out of Florida. And so I would literally change shirts. I would start looking, more like a race car driver instead of a truck driver. And we would go into the races like as part of their team. But really, we were going to the races in a pickup truck and trailer. And we had Nike sponsorship. We had a FedEx deal that was for millions of dollars per year. And we lost it at the last second. And they were we did so many cool things. Like I'll get into this. Like, so as a motorcycle racer, you're very, very selfish. Everything's about you, and I get into the car racing thing. And now I'm like the first professional or not the first, I'm the only professional car racer. I'm sure there was someone before me, but the only professional car racer with a prosthetic leg. And we were driving the stick shift. So Nike made us this slide for my heel so that I wouldn't miss the clutch pedal, because you don't feel it. So you don't know where your leg is really when you have a fake one. And so anyway, I get this sponsorship from a prosthetic company, and I think it was like going to pay some good money, like 30 grand or something. I was all excited. And I went in and told Rod, and Rod's he's like, oh, that's really cool. But what if you talked to them and got free prosthetics for kids around the country where we're going to be racing, so that when we stop in Florida, we're going to gift this kid a $25,000 prosthetic, like a kid that doesn't have insurance, that whole thing. Right. So really help someone out, really, really help someone get back on their feet. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, but how does that pay me? He's like, well, I'm already paying you. So I was like, okay. So anyway, it was the first time that I ever, started being charitable. And so we aligned ourselves with Limbs for Life organization, and they would find the recipients, because they could do all the background checks. We wanted to make sure we weren't giving it to someone that didn't deserve it, like a bad dude or something.
Right.
And so they did all the background checks. They would align everything to meet the kids when we got there, and then we would have a presentation. Of course, we did it with media, and so we got a lot of people. I hate to say the word awareness, I can't stand it, but that's what we did. I mean, we got people learning about this stuff and how expensive these prosthetics are and this and that. And it was such a great program. And Rod is pretty much a genius. I would say he's one of the hardest workers I know, and he made all this happen. And so he also got FedEx on board, and they weren't sponsoring us at the moment, but I think he spent like $70,000 to $100,000 just on the presentation to go talk to FedEx.
Wow.
And so FedEx is on board. We got everything going. And I don't know if you ever follow NASCAR, but if you do, there was a guy named JJ Yaley that raced for FedEx.
Right.
And JJ Yaley sucked. He was a great dirt track racer, super talented guy, but for whatever reason, he couldn't make it work in NASCAR. And the problem was he was racing under the FedEx banner. And when FedEx went to Joe Gibbs Racing and said, what is going on? We can't be having, FedEx and not last place, but we can't be a non-winning team. And he said, what's it going to take? And he said, a lot more money. And that's where our budget went. So we went from, I honestly thought I was going to get rich racing cars. And it went from that to we stopped racing because we were he had spent money he didn't even have, And so when that FedEx deal fell through, we were done. And it was so close. FedEx flew us out to Memphis to meet with us, to apologize for going that far and then not pulling through. And I met the president of FedEx, and they very apologetic about everything. And I mean, he really wanted to do this, but they had a commitment already with NASCAR and FedEx and Joe Gibbs. And so I was without a ride, and plus we had worked really hard on that. And I still, because of that, I still was getting offers to race other cars, but just on a local level. But still, it was a lot of fun, and it helped, hone in my skills and stuff. And then Dave approached me, and he wanted, at first, when he first talked about King of the Hammers, I was well into my Porsche program, and he asked me my thoughts on it, and I was one of the many that told him this is a horrible idea. It's never going to work, and what was I wrong? But again,
right.
But so he invited me to the first race, and I couldn't do it. And he invited me to the second race, and I was able to do that. And I raced with JR, because Randy was racing with another guy that he built a car for, and he was the driver. Whereas with JR, you're never going to be the driver. JR is the driver no matter what.
Right.
And so, and I mean, it's his car, it's his money. Of course, that's the way it should be. And so Dave was like, hey, why don't you race with JR? He needs a good co-pilot. And, I think it'll be a good thing. I think you guys have a really good chance at winning. And so I went down and I started approaching King of the Hammers like I did my other professional, adventures. And I remember JR and I getting laughed at, because it would be, I don't know, not midsummer, but we'd just be on an off weekend out at the Hammers wearing our full gear, like fire suits, helmets, everything. And I was like, because we'd never run that stuff before in rock crawling,
Right.
And I was like, JR, we're going to be in this car for hours. It's not like last year where you guys, I think you might have worn like some cheap suits or something, but you were wearing motorcycle helmets, and we're going to be in this thing for a long time. We're going to have a lot of competition. This is a real race this year. And I want to win it. Like I never go into a race not wanting to win it. And so I was like, we need to train like we're in the race. We need to wear our gear for hours. Who knows? What if our sweat is like too much to handle without wearing like a tampon or something on your forehead? Or, we had to do that in motorcycle racing a lot. Like, you don't know that stuff until you're in the situation. And the worst time to find out about those problems is during the race.
Right.
So we were very serious. JR was just as serious as I was about winning. And he's a professional, and he, I had no problems with him like saying, this is too much, or this is embarrassing because we're the only ones out here looking like goons, and it was a great, experience. We almost won it, as everyone says. We broke a link while we were in the lead, and I think we had like 13 miles to go. But so that was my very first KOH. And then Dave again, and Dave has always he's always had my back. That's why I always have his back. He's a friend through and through. Even when we're not friends, we're having like a little bitch fight, we're still.
Well, that happens with Dave.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. But I mean, so me and Dave went for a couple years without speaking. And he called me one time because he had to. I don't remember what it was, but he had to call me. I know he didn't want to. And he called me, and he's like, how's it going? This is during the recession. And I was like, it's not going good, man. Like, I'm going to probably lose my house. I haven't made a payment in a long time, and this and that. And this is obviously after the Porsche thing. And he says, this is after not talking. And I didn't deserve to be talked to him by the things I said, basically to Dave. And instantly it was just like, what do you need? I was like, huh? He's like, just let me know what you need. And he said, I don't have the money, but I've got damn good credit. And he said, well, you're not going to lose your house. I mean, that was after 2 years of not speaking and having a gigantic blow up at each other. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. And I'll never forget it. And, you know, that's just the way it is. And a lot of people don't see that, but I've seen it. And, you know, just so anyway, so Dave put me in touch with Trent Fab, with Derek Trent. And Derek, I forgot, they had a race, they had an XRA race in Moab. And I didn't have a buggy anymore. So I was kind of just part of the scene. I had my little Jeep TJ. And so I went to Moab to, you know, take my Jeep and stuff. And this is before the whole house thing where I almost lost my house. But I went there and Lisa, Derek's wife, got sick. And I was talking with Derek already, and he's like, hey, you want to co-drive? And the first thing I said is, do we stand a chance to win? You know, because I just didn't want to be in it for, you know, half-assed. And he's like, yeah, we do. And I was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. And so I make Derek go out, and we're the only ones walking the course, you know, and I'm like trying to figure out I'm like, all right, you can do these doubles right here. And he's like, no way, we can't do. I was like, dude, we can do these doubles. He's like, well, what happens if we come up short? I was like, well, why would you ever think about coming up short? We're not going to come up short. You make sure you do the double. He's like, I'm not a motocrosser. I don't know how to do doubles. I was like, I got you. You know, when I tell you to floor it, you floor it, and you don't lift until I tell you to lift. And Derek's a good driver. He didn't race motorcycles, you know, didn't race motocross. And so we're doubling this double all day. And I don't know, I think Shannon might've done it also, but I was driving I was co-driving and telling Derek when to floor it to make these doubles. And we led all day long. And then we came up short one time and we hit so damn hard. It knocked the wind out of us. Derek broke his back, and we still had one more run to do. But we were in the lead. And Derek's like, he can't breathe, and I'm catching my breath. And, you know, we lost that round, obviously. And we go back, and he's like, I'm hurt bad. And I'm like, Derek, here's your option. If you tell people how hurt you are, we're not going to be allowed to race again. So if you just suck it up, and I didn't know he had a broken back, of course. And I said, if you just suck it up, you're going to start feeling better. You know, when you catch your breath, I was like, just don't tell people, because they came rushing to us, you know, and I'm having this conversation before people get to us so he can start telling them how hurt he is. And I'm like, just don't tell them that you're hurt. Just tell them you knocked the wind out of yourself, and let's go out and win this thing. And he's like, all right. The dude sucked it up, man. Like he had a broken back, and we went out and he went and did the doubles again. And
he knew not to back off or at least get the speed up.
Well, yeah. It wasn't his fault. What happened is they had laid some water down, and we spun the tires.
Okay.
And we didn't have enough speed, and once we were so committed, there was just nothing to get out of it. And we barely clipped it too. I mean, he knew. And so I think he, you know, hit it a little bit faster, knowing that we had slid some, but we barely clipped it with the rear tires, and it jolted us so bad. And it was like a straight up thing. It wasn't friendly at all. If he didn't build such heavy duty tanks, then the car would have probably broken into 3 pieces. But yeah, so ironically, what happened is, since Derek broke his back, and we were now, I think we finished 3rd in the points. The only one that could race that vehicle for the rest of the season was me. So, I mean, you know, just by luck, I got into the driver's seat. And these XRA races had a lot of motocrosser stuff, things in them, big jumps and and it was my kind of thing. I hated the rocks. I never liked racing in the rocks. I liked rock crawling and doing super technical stuff, but I didn't like flooring it into the boulder field, mostly because I never had the equipment to back me up doing that.
Right.
And I wasn't good enough mechanical wise to fix when I broke things really bad. So I was kind of easy on stuff in the rocks. But when we got out on the motocross tracks, I wasn't easy anymore. I was giving her the beans. And so I did pretty good in that XRA race or the season. I think we finished, I don't remember if it was 6th or 8th or something like that for the overall. But it was pretty good considering I'd never driven his rig and and it wasn't that was when Derek still had like a trail rig that he made into a race car,
right,
instead of just making a race car. So I thought it was pretty good with what we had, and Derek was happy, and I was getting some press from being the motorcycle guy and this and that. And I forgot that in 2008 the X Games decided to have a motorcycle race for amputees.
right.
And so I went and raced that, and I did good there. And that helped with a lot of like attention. I got free motorcycles again after that. And not that the factory ever sponsored me really before, but I had people buying me bikes before. But I was actually getting bikes from Suzuki and parts, and I was getting gear now. It was crazy. I'm well past my motorcycle racing career. Well, I'll say the funny thing was when I got interviewed in the Porsche, I got interviewed a lot because of my prosthetic leg, and they'd ask me how it happened, and I'd say something, and then I'd say, well, I'm probably the fastest guy in the world with one leg on a dirt bike. I'd say that, and then now a couple years after the Porsche thing, now X Games comes out with a race, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to back up what I've been saying. So I went out and I got a bike. I just went out and bought like a bike, and I started riding. And by now I was working with Rod, and I had kind of a full-time job, and then I was working for this dispatcher. So I was like a broker to get loads like transported and stuff, because I knew the business, and I figured I could make some money. Well, pretty soon I'm riding on the weekends, and these guys are like, yeah, you're pretty quick, but there's this other guy, and he's going faster. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I feel like I'm going good. And so then I start taking like a day off during the week. I didn't take the day off. What I would do is I'd go to the track, and I'd park so far away that you couldn't hear the bikes, and I'd make all my phone calls and everything in between practice sessions. And and I'd always be like sick to my stomach, quote unquote, on Wednesdays. And so I could be away from my phone for 20 minutes at a time and make it seem like I was in the bathroom. And so now I'm riding Wednesdays and Saturdays and Sundays. And still, guys are like, there's this other guy. I'm like, all right. So I quit. I quit work, the smart thing to do. Quit work, and I start riding like every other day, just hammering out motos, trying to get fast. And then so I had good success at the X Games, and I won 2 gold medals, and I got a bronze. And then so that helped me getting like rides, and more media coverage when I was racing Ultra 4, because I had X Games stuff behind me, and then the Porsche racing and motocross, so it helped me get into, and I think some guys were a little jealous of it, that the attention I would get, because I wasn't putting down the results. I mean, I did win like smaller stuff, like at the time NorCal races were small, and I won a lot of those. And I never won King of the Hammers. I only finished once, and even though I thought I should have won it a couple times, I only finished once.
It's a tough race to finish. It really is.
It is, and especially when you're trying to win it, because then the risk of breaking the car is like huge.
Right.
But I'd go out there and we'd have problems. I mean, Derek was trying his hardest, and then in 2010 it all kind of came to a standstill. Jesse Combs was my co-driver. Oh, maybe that was, I don't remember. I get messed up on my years, but so Jesse Combs was my co-driver for I think 1 or 2 KOHs, and we had a really good relationship. She was like one of the dudes. She would come over and work on my Jeep with me, just laying under there, wrenching, just one of the guys. And we never dated or anything, but we spent quite a bit of time together. And when you go to SEMA and you got Jesse Combs on your arm as your co-driver, you get sponsorship.
Right.
Let me tell you, I landed Goodyear, Optima. I mean, there were so many sponsors I got, and I guarantee you it had more to do with Jesse being there than how cool I was. So the we had like some really, really good times. And Derek was trying. We had all this sponsorship going into our last year, like big time. And Griffin, I mean, you can edit this out if you want, but Griffin screwed me over pretty good. They were supposed to pay me quite a bit of money, and they didn't. And I ran everything up on my credit cards because they kept promising to pay me, and then they didn't pay me. So they didn't pay me. I ran up my credit cards, and that's why I had so much trouble with my house payment after that. And so it was. I'm still not happy about it. It still leaves a sour taste in my mouth, because if they weren't going to do it, they should have just told me they weren't going to do it. But it was quite a bit of money for the X Games. And I was plastered with Griffin, graphics everywhere, down my legs, jersey, bike. Then even the day that I was at 4 Wheel Parts, I was getting the wrap for Derek's buggy. And I said, hey, you guys haven't paid me for X Games yet. Part of the other half of the deal was for King of the Hammers. What do you want to do? Because if you're not going to pay me, then I'm not going to put you on. I'll put someone else in your spot. No, it's good. So I put him on. Never saw any money. I'm super bitter about it, obviously.
And you rightly should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Because the money that they owe me is nothing to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was a lot to me. I'm not a rich guy. And then that soured me on the whole racing thing. I had to go back on my word to all the sponsors that I got, telling them, I was racing the whole series and this and that. And basically, I was out of money and I couldn't do it. And so I had to renege on all those promises I made about going places. And so that was it for me in racing. And then Gene came along, and Gene Mooneyham, and we were friends. And I kind of wanted just to get the finish, at King of the Hammer, since I never had one. So in 2016, he said I could race his car. And he had like a car that he bought from some guy up in Northern California. It wasn't like, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but it wasn't like super special. It was just a car. It was a really good car. It wasn't like the fastest car or the best suspended car. I think it was a 4800 car. So single shock on 37s. And I'm a wheelman. So I went out for qualifying and I did pretty good. I forgot what I qualified. I think it was, I want to say I was in the top 30, but it might've been better. I don't remember. But we finished the race. So it was an awesome race. Like we never got out of the car. My co-driver, Brent, Team Indiana was there, and or Brant, sorry, Team Indiana, and we never had to get out of the car. We just drove the race. We finished, and it was awesome. I was super excited, and then that was it. I haven't raced it since.
And now you're transporting vehicles. You got
Yep.
a vehicle transport company.
Yep.
And you're not like just delivering, a car next door type thing. You're
No.
still doing the high end cars.
Yeah. I've got a $40 million car in my trailer right now.
That's
and then
insane.
I've got some cheapo GT4 RS. It's only worth like 300,000. That's behind it. So yeah, those guys, I mean, they can't afford a $40 million car. It's crazy. But yeah, so I'm in a good spot because I have a really good reputation for being on time and not crashing, at least not crashing the truck. I have a reputation, I guess, for crashing race cars, but
Not while you're towing them.
not while I'm towing them. So I drive slow. It's a good job for me because my legs, they're not the greatest. They're, so now I've broken both my femurs, and I just got my knee replaced about a year ago. My ankle's fused, and then my other leg, I'm missing my leg from about mid shin down, which is no big deal really. It looks scary and all that stuff, and you think it's going to be bad, but just so you guys know, if you ever have to lose a leg, it's not that bad. And I get to sit on my ass and make decent money, listen to podcasts and music and go places. It's exciting when the weather's bad and you got a lot of responsibility. You're sliding around with some expensive stuff on the trailer, and it's a lot of responsibility, and I like that. I like having that on my shoulders for some reason. I don't go shopping. I don't do anything when I have a car in the trailer, because everything I haul now is like really high end, and it's just too easy to steal the whole truck and trailer.
Right. So you don't leave it.
I don't leave it. And my reputation is so good that I don't advertise. I don't have to call anybody. My phone rings, and when it doesn't ring, I'm happy for it. I've been on the road now since September 14th. So
that's crazy.
I'm looking forward to getting home. Yeah. And not a single phone call was made. I mean, I had a big job to do in Rhode Island for this Audrain Motor Week thing, and I was responsible for like 20 cars or something getting there. And these are all like high-end Porches, and mostly all I haul are Porches. And I do have a couple Ferraris that I haul. One guy has a GTO 250, and it's an $80 million car, and I haul that thing all over the place too.
That's insane.
And, it is. It really is. It's and I don't know why, but I'm never nervous about it. It just doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me really. I think that I avoid, like, I'm pretty smart at it. I don't go through cities, during the wrong times. I try to go through the big cities in the middle of the night. I try to stay away from people. I'll take the loops around the cities almost every time.
Right.
And just stay away from people, because I don't think I'm going to crash. I think that someone could hit me, and that would be pretty bad too. So, it's a good place for me. I feel important in what I do, and I feel part of it. Like, the car I'm hauling right now is the number 46 Porsche. It's the very first Porsche that won Le Mans. It's the first time the factory ever even entered a race car. So it's Porsche's very first race car.
Wow.
And it's a 1951. It's got 43 horsepower, and it won its class in Le Mans, and it beat all the competitors in the class above it, because they didn't brake. They just kept driving. And it's super cool. And I've been hauling this thing for a long time now, maybe 10 years or so, maybe 12, I don't know. And I haul it all over the country, Florida, Rhode Island. I just left Seattle yesterday, and we do shows and stuff. And it's at all the big car events, and I feel like I'm part of it because I was hauling it. The story on this car is it was nobody knew, not even Porsche knew which car won Le Mans. There was only 3 of them, maybe 4 that were built, and one of them won the race. And Porsche was such a small company back then. They didn't realize this was the start of what they are now. And so they sold the cars, and nobody knew which one had actually won the race because they stripped all the decals off, and it was just, that was it, and they just didn't know. And so Rod Emery ended up finding the car and taking pictures and measuring pictures from the race back in 1951. And since all 4 cars were hand built, all 4 cars were different. Like one door wasn't going to fit on any of the other 3 cars.
Right.
And so he did a bunch of measuring and this and that, and then figured out which car was actually the race winner. And then his investor, his partner, bought it, and they did a restoration. I was hauling it before it was restored, when nobody knew that it was the car, and so like I said, I feel like I'm part of it, and they enjoy having me there at the events and stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, and I like it.
And your personal life is going good?
It's going real good. I got married in 2017, and I had a practice marriage for a while, but I got my real marriage in 2017, and she is a nurse. She is a hard worker. She's a horse girl, and horse girls, they're super hard workers. They're not afraid of getting dirty, taking some risk. They can run a little rich sometimes, but that's that's what you get. So, but I like it. And she has a couple of boys, and so back to the whole Rod Emery thing and being charitable. After X Games, I was going around different hospitals and stuff, and I would talk to kids that had lost a leg or were getting ready to lose one, and I'd tell them all, hey, it's going to be okay. You're gonna be fine. Like, I learned how to snowboard, wakeboard. I still ride motorcycles. Obviously, you're gonna be totally fine. It's not that big of a deal. And I was like, you're still gonna get hot chicks, and like, your mom's pretty hot. And and then next thing you know, we're married. So no, it took a while, but yeah. So, but that was the beginning of it. And she's such a good person for me to have in my life, and I've got some really quality people in my life. I don't have a lot, but the people that are in my life are high end, and she's one of them. And we bought we live in Apple Valley, California. We bought John James's old house.
Okay.
And we live in Apple Valley, and we bought 50 acres in Utah, and we're in the process of, we got a barn on it. We have a 5th wheel trailer out there, and we're going to put a big shop up and a house. And I want to put a skid pad out there and a go-kart track and a shooting range. And yeah, it should be pretty fun. So we have
your house then in Apple Valley's next to Eric Anderson's?
It's not right next to him. Like,
okay.
John's new house is basically right next to, well, Eric is right next to John.
Okay.
Right. But I bought the old house.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I bought it back in 2003.
All right.
So,
Very
but
good.
it's, yeah, everything's going very good, actually. So,
well,
I got a new knee. Hopefully I'll be riding again pretty soon. I literally got my knee replaced because I wanted to ride better. Because my old knee had so many surgeries and stuff. It was holding me back. And I didn't care about walking. Like, I still complain because it should have been healed up. In my opinion, it should have been healed up better than it is now. And so I'm always bitching about it. And I'm like, well, I know I walk around better every day and I can do my job better, but that doesn't matter. Like, I did this so I could ride better. And I haven't been able to ride yet, so I'm a little bitter. But I'm getting there. I'm probably going to be riding in the next couple of weeks and see how it does.
Goals.
Yeah. All I do is trail ride now. I don't do any racing anymore. I got a Porsche 914 that we're going to make into it's already a track car, but it needs to be a faster track car. So we're going to do that. And Rod, actually, only a few weeks ago, Rod bought our old race car back. So we have the GT3 Cup car, and we're going to, he said we're going to start taking that to the track and do track days, because he's got a son and a son-in-law, and he wants to teach them, how to drive and that kind of thing too. Not that they don't know how to drive, but how to drive on a racetrack.
Right. There's the difference.
Yep. And so, so things are going really good. I'm excited about it.
That's so great to hear.
Yeah, I've been through some downtimes and I got through it, and I try not, something my dad always taught me, and which kind of hurt me a little bit with friends and everything too. And people, the way they look at me, but my dad being a baseball pitcher, he was like, you don't ever show anybody what makes you tick. You don't show when you're super happy. You don't show when you're super sad, because you don't want your competition to know how to get to you. And I mean, that was drilled into me since I was a little boy. So, so a lot of people think and I'm not saying I'm not cocky, or especially I used to be, but they thought I was more cocky because I had that kind of a attitude. I wouldn't be too happy when I did really good. I didn't want to show it. I was jumping for joy inside, but it wasn't allowed to, that was against the rules to show it. And my dad wasn't trying to be a dick. He just was trying to help me out as a competitor.
Right.
And some people don't have to be like that. Like, Jason Shearer, guy's incredible. He's one of the gnarliest, best dudes I've ever met. And same with Rod, those guys, they show their emotions more than I do. And I wish I could, but it almost feels fake if I change now. You know what I mean?
Right. Understood.
But things are going good, and I'm just trying to keep a level head about it and make sure that they don't start dipping too low again.
Well, good thing. And Chris, I want to say thank you so much for spending the time. I know that you're working, you're driving, and you're hauling a valuable load, and you're on your way back and all that kind of stuff. And you took the time in your day to do this. It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, just for the record, I did pull over to do this.
Right.
But yeah, I needed the break a little bit, so that's good. And I really appreciate it. It kind of, I sacrificed a lot for racing, and I mean, a lot more than a lot of people. And when I get to do stuff like this, it helps, because nobody knows who I am, and it makes it a little bit better that some people think of me still, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I hope that this story of yours is able to motivate or enlighten others that may be in the same kind of situation, or something similar at least, and know that, you don't give up.
No.
You keep going.
Yep. I mean, look at all the things that have happened to me. And
Right.
even getting my leg removed. I mean, my life has gotten so much better after I got my leg removed. It's unbelievable. Like, the things I've done are just incredible. And the opportunities, I mean, I had so many doors open up for me. And my dad always said, you got to make yourself available to take advantage of those opportunities. and I've always tried to. I had to sacrifice a lot to race the car. I had to move out of my house. I had to give up everything I was doing. I was making decent money already transporting, and I had to walk away from all that stuff so I could go try to be, a race car driver. And I'm not bitter about it. It's awesome. Like, my story is pretty damn cool,
Absolutely.
Race Daytona Supercross, race Daytona, Rolex 24. So that's pretty badass. Not too many people have done that.
No, I would say that double hitter, no, absolutely not.
So,
well, Chris, thank you. And
thank you very much.
I hope to run into you figuratively, not necessarily, an impact, but at some point. And I'm really grateful that you spent the time and shared your story.
Well, thanks again for calling me.
All right. And I'll let you know when this is going to air.
Sounds great.
All right. You take care and drive safe.
Thanks a lot. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.